Hi, everybody. We will get started here. Is this? Can you hear me? Is it like better closer? Far close. Yeah. Alex, please take your seat. Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor. This is really gonna, okay, right here. Is that better? Good? Okay. So Dr. Vaiden and I are gonna be talking about some companion animal care, evidence collection, case building, behavior, and handling. We have some dogs, a cat, and some snakes, which sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. And since it's the last presentation, I'm gonna make you guys interact with me. I just don't know where to hold this. Is it here? Like here? No, you guys can't hear that at all. Here? Okay, cool. Anyways, I'll stop doing that. I will pre-warn everybody that there are some pictures and videos of some cases, but nothing too bad. So we're gonna start with some overview of companion animals, evidence collection, like building your cases, working with owners and your vets, case examples, some investigation tools for companion animals, companion animal handling and behavior, and hands-on demonstration, like I said. So I'm just gonna touch on a couple things. I know this is gonna be a really big overview. This is probably why everyone has it like here, huh? Probably. Is that better? That's worse. Better? Huh? Okay, I'm seeing some like heads. Okay, great. I'll just not walk around, which is gonna be hard. So here I'm just gonna talk about basic things when you're looking at companion animals. It's gonna be very basic and I know overview for everybody, but shelter, food, water, vet care is usually what we're looking for. Here's a DIY feral cat box that you can make, and then a dog house. Here's some tips for your companion small animals. Obviously, rabbits, guinea pigs, all this stuff. Food, water, enclosure, appropriate housing, vet care. Is a diet consistent with their species? What are they feeding them? A big thing with these two is if they have a relationship with their vet, especially since they're exotic, something maybe to think about. Our companion animals, for reptiles, again, this is just making sure that all the needs are being met. This is a tegu I had in college. His name is Ralph. I'm sure a lot of people don't really see a lot of tegus, but I love him. And a nice bearded dragon tank that we have, and then another snake tank, making sure these guys have a cold side and a hot side. We dealt with a case in Leadville that had a snake in a really big enclosure, and he had a cold side and a hot side, but the cold side was actually right next to the wood-burning stove, so he didn't have a good cold side for his thermoregulation. So concerning somewhat. And the lovely birds, which everyone loves. I'm looking at you, Kathleen. So here's a good bird cage on the right picture. Food, water, again, enclosure, vet care, very basic broad stuff, but making sure that they have perches and they're in a good wire cage. This is like hard to, okay. So here's a couple things of evidence collecting. Obviously, there's no way I can touch on every single case we're ever gonna deal with out in the field or that you have dealt with. So at any time, feel free to argue with me. I love that. What other evidence do you guys usually collect besides this? You know, like just kind of start thinking about that. Are you guys gonna pull a collar off? This was a case in park where a horse was shot incorrectly. So the hole you see, if I had a laser on, the big hole on the horse's head, right, was done inappropriately, so the horse didn't die, and I think we ended up obviously euthanizing that, right, Courtney? Just kidding, sorry, Courtney. I'm sure the horse got euthanized. Again, Dr. Vaiden's gonna touch on body scoring a little better than me, but I just wanted to chat about this case. This is Petey. Petey was in Park County, and he was an obese Catahoula dog with some neglected nails there. I actually did charge for Petey. I don't know how many people actually agree with charging for obesity or how many people have done it. Head? Okay, head shaking's great. So while it's a hard case, and I know that our DA was a little reluctant just because it's harder to prove. You know, does someone love their dog too much? I don't know. But again, it's kind of the opposite side of usually what we're dealing with. Usually we're dealing with skinny animals or lack of food. So I thought this was a really good case to kind of see what you guys' thoughts were on it. Petey did get adopted and is at a healthy weight, so that's good. Go Petey. It's really weird not walking around. I'm really struggling. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about condition of animals. This is usually what you're seeing out in the field, or maybe things to think about, things that are going to help build your cases. So they're going to kind of be broken up a little bit. Untreated wounds. This is our horse from our Montezuma case, which I'll talk about a little later, who had an infection, obviously. Couple things. This is a little Chihuahua from our Montezuma case as well. Brimley was hit by a car a couple months prior to us getting custody of him. When I had spoken to the owner, she had said that she took the dog to the vet and she paid $900 and the dog was recovering, et cetera, et cetera. And so I called a couple vets around the area. Come to find out, he was hit by a car, I think 4 months prior to this picture. And she refused medical treatment. The person who actually hit him brought him to the vet clinic. The owner was later found, refused medical treatment, so he actually had have his leg amputated from lack of care, but got adopted. Failure to quarantine, I know that's something kind of hard to charge maybe, or maybe it's really easy to charge for like our parvo cases, but this is a nice picture of strangle outbreak. I heard someone say yeah. Yeah, great. Again, I'm sure everyone's dealt with a matted fur case. I think this is important for proof that the owner failed to provide basic care. Not much to say about that. Greet or retreat is a new trademark I'm trademarking. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think it's important to decide if the dog's gonna greet you or it's gonna retreat. This picture on the right was also in Park County. He was tied up to the post and had a bag of dog food next to him. Was not able to eat the dog food. It was duct taped all around. So he wasn't super friendly on scene, but later was fine. And then the picture of the dog here has some obvious injury on its back leg. And how is that gonna, change your guys' investigation, or if the dog can actually get to the food, if the food's somewhere it can't get to it, or how is that gonna change how you guys are gonna handle these dogs or these animals that are injured. So I know that this is a companion talk, but I can't not talk about llamas. So here's a nice unsheared llama on the left, and we'll just pretend that's a dog. And then on the right here is a good picture I have from Park as well, of a untrimmed hoof. What's nice about this picture to me is you can see the 2 feet on the back that are pretty normally worn, and then the foot on the front. All those tendons and muscles are really being pushed down from lack of trimming. This is just another couple pictures, a nail grown into a pad, and then this dog's teeth. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with it? It's a trick question, nothing. So I just thought that was important to say that, sometimes you're looking at these animals, and while it's not easy to put your hand in a dog's mouth, sometimes it's important to look at that to help build your case or help your case. So this is where we had some chickens and turtles housed on the right, so your multi-species enclosures. This is a video taken by an RP. It's just resource guarding. It's kind of a nice little video. Hopefully the sound works. No. So I like that video just because it shows that, these starving dogs, while the RP is throwing the food over the fence, how some of the dogs maybe aren't getting access to the food. I think that's a good video. Competitions of your animals in your cases, especially in your multi-species enclosures, are important and important to note for your guys' cases. What do you guys think about the multi-species, would you guys leave a warning for that, or nothing? Yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's the bedding's pulled out. Like I said, there was chickens in the like little child play thing, and then a turtle in the blue thing. I think it's sawdust on top of carpet. Right? I think it would depend on the turtle that's in there, maybe, or how much, the chicken's not going to stay in that pen. I don't know what kind of chickens they're dealing with, but there's no way a chicken's going to stay in that little thing. Lack of adequate protection from severe weather. Again, this is a hot topic, whether livestock needs shelter or not. Again, this is in Park County, middle of winter. We got called about these horses that were left. The food is mine, so there was no food. But they got left out in this pen. Neighbors hadn't seen anybody in, I think, like 4 or 5 days. No water. So this is Johnny Cash. Johnny, so I know I'll have better pictures, but Johnny Cash and then the taller sorrel were about a 1, and then this little mare was about like a 2 to 3. But what's important about this to me is these horses or any animals out in the severe weather. I tried to get a video of it because the wind was so severe that you couldn't hear somebody talking next to you. So the more important part of this case is, sorry, Rebecca. So this is the horse's penis. The owner took an X-Acto knife and cut it because he thought he saw a lump in it. So he took the X-Acto knife, cut the penis, and it got infected, surprise, and actually got frostbitten. So he actually had to have his penis amputated. I always like to surprise Rebecca with my presentations. But this is a good case to me because it shows, would these horses have been in this severe of state if they had a shelter? Probably, right? Like, it would probably make sense. Would he still have frostbite and an infection on his penis? Definitely. But I think it's more important to show there was no food, they're skinny, obviously there's an injury, and there's still no shelter in the middle of winter in Park County, which I think is cruel. Here's another case in Park County for extreme tethering I wanted to touch on. This was a case up in Lake George. There was 3 pit bulls, so this was Dozer. While it looks like he has access to that doghouse, he actually does not. It's boarded off. No food, no water for any of these guys. Paco was actually housed in the house, and despite the catch pole, was actually pretty friendly. And then we have, I can't remember what we named her, but we had the female outside who had no shelter, absolutely, no water. She actually had a lot of injuries to her face. She had an ingrown collar. I know you guys can't really see it, but there's a collar on top of another collar. So the owner saw that the collar was embedded and put a bigger collar over it. She ended up being completely blind from injuries and had really bad ear infections. And all 3 were adopted. Environment of your animal, I think, is important too. Lack of food or clean water. This picture on this side actually had 5 horses in it, and the owner would never let them outside of that shelter. And so there was a couple reasons why she left everybody in there. One, because her fencing couldn't hold the horses from escaping, and she thought it was keeping them warmer in there. And then in the middle, we have a puppy that was crushed with, no one really knows what happened, probably just a bigger litter. And then we have our favorite empty water tank. What about the horse picture? What would you guys do for that? Do you guys think like a warning is, right? It's not really cruel. Is it good husbandry practices? What do you guys think? Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good point. There was quite a bit of manure. I mean, 5 horses. She did, if you can kind of see it on the front, she did scoop some of it out. But there was quite a bit of buildup. But can you guys tell her that she can't house her horses in there? What do you think? No? Alex, what do you think? I will call people out if you guys are not participating. Okay. Yes, I saw your hand up. Okay. Right. 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 Okay. Cool. Five. There's 5 horses in that. No, absolutely, yeah. I just think it's important to look at these more challenging cases when you're like, well, I can't make her not have these horses housed here. You can do warnings or suggest different education. Do you guys think this is all the horses were in great body condition. She said she lets them out like when she cleans the stall, so like 30 minutes a day they're let out in this like smaller pen that you can kind of see. So what do you guys think about that? Probably, yeah. I mean, it's like a 10-foot panel on each side, so 20 by 20. Nothing that we could see. Fine. Harder case, right? Like a little more challenging to figure out what you're gonna do. Not as easy. Couple case examples I wanted to touch on. This was our Montezuma case. This is kind of our poster child of it. This is our rabbit. From there, hopefully that's not too blurry. But this case was a month after I got hired, about a month and a half after Rebecca got hired. We had gone to the property not really knowing how many animals or what we were dealing with. So the far, like this, is where our rabbits were in this trailer, and then we had horses in 3 different locations and dogs on this like top little hoopla thing right there. And then cats inside this trailer with our chihuahua that was hit by a car in this green top trailer. So I'm just going to talk about the companion animals, obviously, today, while there was quite a bit of livestock. So we had 12 dogs in total, 2 cats, and 30 rabbits. Here are our 2 little kitties. Not super bad body-wise. You know, they were okay. They were living in a hoarder house. But definitely some upper respiratory problems. Other than that, not too bad. On the left is where we had a mom and 5 puppies that when we would walk around, all of them would pile into that dog house. And then to the right, we had 4 adult dogs. What's important, I think, about this picture on the right is there was absolutely no gate to get in the pen. There was no, besides that hole, there was no way to enter or exit the pen, have the animals enter or exit. We actually had to break it, like pull it down. And the dog food, I don't know if you can kind of see it on the left, but it was just thrown in there. Here are our puppies. I want to give a shout out to Kathleen. We were standing here trying to figure out how many dogs were in this kennel. This was our first walkthrough, so we were trying to figure out, okay, I think I see a puppy, maybe a mom dog, and we all kind of left him at somewhere else, and Kathleen sat on the ground for a while, and everyone came out, and we got to see that everyone was in okay condition. So I think that's important to also think about when you're on these cases, is taking your time and trying to figure out, slow approaches. Here are our lovely rabbits. These guys were housed in 3 different rooms, if you want to call it that, and stacked on each other, obviously. This is the bathroom. There's just a couple photos that we did grab in this trailer. So these are important to me because it can show the food bowls empty or full of feces. There's quite a bit of, this one is not overcrowded obviously, but we had other kennels that were overcrowded, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We had bowls that were eaten, we had empty water bowls, and no ventilation for these guys. here is our horses I'm just going to touch on. I know it looks like a lot, but there's a horse in there. This is one of our mixed species pen with this case, and a couple horses in this. This was, let's see, I think I have one more. Okay, this was Droopy. Droopy was a 1. Droopy was getting mounted by the little paint behind him while we were there, which is upsetting to see. They had no food, no water, and Droopy would fall down every time that he would try to get mounted. Droopy ended up being completely deaf, right, Courtney? Or blind. He was something. Right. So we had a good video that Courtney took on scene of after we actually threw them some food, watching him try to eat. And how even if you had piles of food there, if it was inadequate, he wouldn't be able to eat it at all because his face was drooped, hence Droopy. Here's a little chestnut stud that we had. I don't know if you guys can really appreciate the panels that are buried in the manure, but I think this is an important picture that we took to trial as well to show he didn't have a gate as well. He had never left the pen. There's another picture of his feet. So again, it's hard to see, but his feet are completely down on his heels. This bathtub was flush with the ground, so he could fall in at any point. He obviously probably wasn't drinking too much of it, but again, just some things that I think are important to think about. Evidence on scene, photographs. I know Ashley covered this really well. I could talk about photographs forever. I'm sure everybody could. But trying to figure out what an accurate representation of the scene is really hard in my opinion. When I'm out there, I try to get what I see, but I'm trying to figure out all these other things I have to do and the animals, and so I feel like I never take enough pictures, even though I take, every picture that anyone could ever think of, but it never feels like enough. So here's some pictures that I wanted to touch on, talking back to our rabbits. So this was in a better controlled environment on the right, obviously, and here's on the left. So while this picture on the left shows there's 3 rabbits in a dog kennel, no food, you can kind of see the injury on her ear, but you can't really appreciate it until it's taken out in a more controlled environment, and you can see some of the injuries, some of the holes in the ears, which again really helped us in trial to show that they're not just put in there to breed and then taken out. Here's another picture of a little kid who had her ear bitten off, which again I think is important, not only to capture them on your scene or how they're living, but then taking them back and maybe getting a better controlled picture is always helpful to me. So again, I shouldn't have to talk about videos too much. I think it's important to do the initial walkthrough, and then when the animals are removed, do that. I think it captures a little more. If the animal can move or an inability to move is important to capture, as well as, are their dogs crying? I really like to take it when it's really windy and it's really cold out, because then you can show somebody you can't hear anything in the video because it's so windy. So here's a So what I think is always hard, in my opinion at least, I wish I could go back and take good videos of our Montezuma case, how it took us 30 minutes to take down the dog kennel to even get the dogs out, and we didn't do that. We couldn't do that really. There was 2 of us removing all the animals, all the companion animals. So trying to figure out how to document that, we had to call somebody in to help transport to the local shelter. We didn't have, we literally had no idea what we were doing with the number of animals. So had we gone back and maybe taken a video or videoed one of us trying to get into that dog kennel or break the ice on other cases, I think is also really important that maybe some people miss. It's easier to show this than it is a couple pictures of the horse maybe struggling to walk. So I always like my videos alongside with my pictures, just to kind of show, your report might say the horse struggled to walk, seemed neurologic, whatever, but the video is more compelling, especially for people who don't know horses. That's more compelling than a picture that the horse is having a hard time walking. we're not watching it again, I'm sorry. Chain of custody, Ashley talked about that really well. I'm not going to talk about it, obviously, but I think it's important to remember what we're removing from the case and how it's going to help us. Obviously, in a year and a half, this dog's not going to look the same. It's going to look a little different. So what can we do to help showcase that and how the dog's state was besides pictures and videos? Interviews. These are just tips or things that I think about when I'm interviewing somebody. Obviously, proof of cruelty, when you're talking to your RPs or your vets, when and where. I mean, I know this is super basic, but I just wanted to touch on it. How do they know the owners? Have they provided any care to the animal? I think is important, like our resource guarding video of the dog. And have they reported it before? It really helps. Questions to ask your owners. I could list 50, 100 things that change every time you have different cases, but these are the first things that come to my mind. Length of ownership, obviously your records. How is the animal cared for? And I usually have the owner demonstrate. I take this scoop of dog food twice a day because the scoop's going to be different no matter what you're feeding. Use of animals, always really important to me, whether it's a dog or a horse or whatever. They're going to be provided stuff a little differently or maybe housed a little differently than what it would be used for, something different. This is also in Park County. We had to hike 6 miles to go get this little saddlebred that had never been haltered. And so trying to walk a horse in like 5-degree weather, anyways. So these are tips for, these are tips that I always keep in my back of my head. Obviously always record it if you can. Follow-ups, make sure you're doing the follow-ups. If someone says, I go to the vet down the street, make sure you're contacting them, obviously. Make it weird is something else I'm trying to trademark. So when you think make it weird, think me. Because I like to sit there and be like, so what kind of horse is this? And then they'll be like, oh, it's a Arabian. And then I'll sit there for a little bit. And then and then they get really weird. And then they're like, oh, it's 14. And then they just keep talking. So make it weird, think of me. Body language, obviously, if it's changing, changes in behavior. Answer stories forever changing. Again, this is just stuff that I always think about. Working with your veterinarians. I'm sure we all have a little bit of a struggle with this, besides me now because I have Dr. Vaiden. But these are something that I always try to think about what I can bring to my vet from a case, what information I can bring to help them. It's going to depend on your working relationship with your vet. So obviously living conditions of the dog or the cat or whatever, overall property, this little miniature horse on the right. Actually, it's not a funny story, so I'm sorry that I'm laughing. But we got a call in Park County, and she was housed with another bigger horse. And someone was like, hey, there's a fly mask on this horse. It can't walk. But the owner's out sometimes. So we go out there. It's just an open field, and there's like a river. And so we walk back there, and we're told that this other bigger horse is super aggressive, like will come and kill you because it loves a little horse. So we get out there, and the horse cannot walk. She's obviously super, super thin. And I'm thinking, okay, a fly mask. Like, there's obviously nothing under it, right? So I'm talking to the other officer, and I'm like, make sure that horse doesn't come kill me. And I, like, take off the fly mask, and her whole face comes off with it. And I was like, oh, and I, was like, what do I do? So she couldn't really walk. We had to carry her over the river. We got a warrant, we charged, but it was one of those cases where in your head, you're like, oh, a fly mask, like some people that's really bad. Someone's like her eyes falling out. Well, it was. And she has some duct taped little booties here. But it was important to tell the vet, obviously, that had happened up in Harmony. Working with veterinarians, these are stuff that I like to ask my veterinary to bring back to me for my cases. Previous injuries found, obviously, additional cruelty, photo statements, medical records, some documentations, obviously the result, additional procedures, recommended treatment, maybe your timeline of how this happened. Do you guys think I'm missing anything? Anything else you guys would ask, maybe? Great. So that's usually what I try to figure out. Obviously, if they're willing to testify, which I'm sure a lot of them probably aren't, but what else can I use to prove this happened is something that I like to think about. What? Oh, so I wish that was a companion animal, but it's obviously not. This is off of an elk from hunting, and he had an injury to his one leg, and that's the exact same bone on the right leg. It really doesn't mean anything. I just think it's really fascinating because we were trying to figure out what happened, if it was an injury. Obviously, it was an infection, but to see the one bone compared to the other bone, so I don't have a good answer for you. Sorry. So this is usually my mental checklist when I'm building a case for anything, or when I've completed a case, I go back and make sure I've checked all my boxes. This is gonna look different, I'm sure, for everybody, but this is usually just what I think about. Obviously, when you're doing your warrants, make sure that it has all the verbiage you need: unborn, below ground, above ground, so you're covered there. Probable cause, again, that's the stuff like your interviews, everything that we just covered. Entry and care, statements. I know most of this is just kind of overview for everybody. Reports from all involved. Where are my animals going? Am I using another agency to assist me? How to get that set up. Again, a warrant, return of service for that warrant. Your evidence receipts are important when you're taking something. Cost of care and owner surrender, restitution, and then obviously your prep for your court hearings, which is important. So this is Sola. Sola was, so it's kind of a complicated case. Sola was found, oh no, I'm lying, hold on. So on the left side, I got a call from someone driving by saying there's a dog and some chickens housed in the middle of this field. This is back in park, obviously. So I get there, and this is the only structure, this is like the only thing on the property. There's no property marker, there's literally nothing. There's a couple of ducks and I think a chicken in the doghouse, have food, all in good body condition. So I leave a notice of warning, or I leave a business card, just that I was there, call me, whatever. And so I talk to the people, and they're like, oh, we're bringing our RV out, we'll be back, no problem. And I'm like, yeah, there was a report of a red dog. Do you guys have a dog? And they said no. So I think it was, so a month goes by. Someone found a red dog in the same area. So this is Sola. This is me picking up Sola and posting her. And the people had since vacated this property on the left, had totally gone, didn't know where they were, but she was found around the same area. And she had a microchip. And so I scanned for microchip, found the owner, ended up being my owner. So called them, hey, I have your dog. They said, oh, great. We moved to a different spot, we'll come pick the dog up. So pick the dog up, don't think anything of it, and get their new address, which wasn't a correct address. So then a little bit goes by. It's now 4 months. Get another call. Hey, these people showed up next to me. They have this red dog and some goats now and a couple chickens, and they're never out here. So lo and behold, I go back out there to a second property, see Sola. She's looking a little different, but nothing too bad. The still birds are in the blue doghouse. They have them in there so birds don't get them, falcons don't get them. Then we have my little goat friend on the right. Went out there, actually I think I have a video maybe. Oh yeah, sorry, don't watch that. So I get out there, no food, no water. So again, I provide water to the dog and to the goat. Here's a cute video of him drinking. I don't know if you guys can hear him slurping or drinking. I don't know what the right term is. Slurping? Slurping a term? Whatever. You can hear him guzzle down the water, which I think is important to take a video of. What? In the wind. Yes, which is so surprising in Park County, right? So here is Sola now. So that was back a couple months prior at a different property. So I go there, I leave my notice of warning, I leave my entry in care, yada, yada, yada. And they call me and they're like, hey, we were just out there. They knocked all the water over, whatever. I say, well, let me come back out with you guys. We'll chat a little bit. So they up and leave. They take everything. They go to another property. Now, 5 months later, we get a Facebook post, right? So this is a post that we see on our South Park bulletin board, whatever. And then we start getting inundated with pictures. So I'm like, no way is this Sola. I just saw her. Well, here she is at the new property, which is now somewhere completely different. So now the 4th property. And we get on scene. Sola looks a little different now. So now I'm like, great, I just built this whole case, right? Knew the owners, the dog looked good, they've moved properties, yada, yada, yada. We get a warrant, remove Sola. Here's Sola's really bad teeth compared to my dog's teeth, right? Here she is at DFL. So then I'm like, great, I know the owner. So then I go back. This is the same property that Sola was at. So here's my warrant, and they had two pigs and 3 goats on the property that were in okay condition. I gave them food and water, left my entry in care for them, came back with my warrant, got Sola out, posted everything, tried to contact them. They changed their number, which is so surprising because I was harassing them. So here is their house or their residence. They were living on the left. And then actually on the right where those pallets are is where the goats were living in that RV. So here's my notice of entry in care. Here's me signing it every single day. Hey, I came here. I fed your animals. Here's everybody eating and drinking. I had some good videos of it. This, I don't know, you guys probably can't tell, but there's that white goat with the black patch. He was actually on all the other properties in really good body condition. So he's thin, which is hard to tell in this picture. So then we got another search warrant. They had not been back to the property. We removed the goats and the pigs, which was also interesting. And the owner actually showed up on the property and was like, oh, no, I'm going to remove them now. I'll take them. And so he got served. It was a wife and husband situation. And so he got served, and we were looking for her. And he was like, that's not my dog. No, that's you have no proof that's my dog. Well, I had the microchip. I had all of these lovely posts on social media, which were the more nicer ones that I could find. So here's him admitting these are his dogs, right? Here's something that I pulled, got a warrant, pulled it. Oops, I didn't black out his. Don't look at the bottom of that picture with the dog. So pretend you don't see that, SON. But I just took a couple pictures of the dog, of this social media. I went into his girlfriend, wife's social media, grabbed all of her stuff to prove this is their dog. Not to mention I had all the other past properties. Couldn't find the wife. She was a vet tech, so she had said that the dog was suffering from something. She was getting some kind of medication. I can't remember. It was a while ago. But anyway, so couldn't find her, wanted to charge her, and she actually ended up stabbing her boyfriend, so we charged her in jail. Which I just like to say. So again, here's my kind of checklist. I just wanted to retouch on it for this case. Obviously, I had my warnings, had my probable cause, right? I had a really long history, social media, had my entry in care for everybody, statements. I had statements from social media, or from the person who posted on Facebook, statements from other people, photos and videos obviously were done, impound paperwork, summons, blah, blah, blah. You guys can read it. So I had all this already done for this case. They were convicted. Sola didn't make it, sorry. I feel like I should lie for those. Yeah, probably. Here's another really quick case. This is Chief on the left, and then Rufus on the right. These dogs were picked up running at large. The person who picked them up called and said, hey, the big white dog is walking really weird. I gave him some water. He smells really bad. I don't know, come get him. So we went out there, got these dogs, came back, and super, super emaciated, which is really hard to tell in the white picture, but you can kind of see his hip bones. He's also standing really weird. I don't know if you guys can see that, but he's kind of hunched over. And then Rufus was perfect. So here's Chief's ears, which pictures just never do this justice. The smell was horrendous, and he actually had a couple broken teeth, a couple dead teeth inside of his mouth too. So we took the dog, we took it to DFL, and on the way there, the owner called, or we had a microchip, but we posted on Facebook while we were heading over to DFL, and because he wouldn't eat really, he had a hard time laying down, he had a hard time walking, so I was like, I'm just gonna take him to DFL, make sure he's not gonna die while he's in, why have him for the 5 days, because that would be my luck. So we take him to DFL. I talked to the owner, and she's like, hey, I've been looking for my dog, blah, blah, blah. So we have her meet us there. After the vets look at them, they're like, this is significant ear infection. He's completely deaf. His ear canals have rotted. He has really bad teeth. He's super emaciated. He's walking like he's been hit by a car. Like, the list goes on and on for Chief, right? So I meet the owner back at the sheriff's office, release Rufus to her, and she gets a warning for that, and then I tell her she's being charged with cruelty, right? I had all this evidence from the vet. He was thin, and she said, well, he's 25 years old. And I said, what? Pyrenees is 25 years old. So I was like, okay, like, what kind of documentation do you have? And anyways, super long story short, she had been convicted in Oregon, somewhere else. She moved out here. She had been convicted on Chief with his ear infection, actually. And a vet reported it, and she was pouring hydrogen peroxide down his ear and Vagisil or something yeast-wise, but was like squirting it down in his ear. And he was a livestock protection dog, which was one of her arguments in court, was like, hey, this dog's a working dog. He's outside. He's protecting my livestock. And anyway, so for Chief, the thing I wanted to touch on Chief was we issued a cost of care. She was determined to pay cost of care. So we spent, I don't know, $10,000 in cost of care for this dog throughout the court process. So we went to a motions hearing. The judge said, we went to a cost of care hearing first. The judge said, yep, cost is fine. Probable cause is great. But you need to find a vet that can house this dog, obviously, because DFL can't do that. So the judge said it was the owner's responsibility. So she found a vet. We transported Chief to the vet and paid the vet for the care. And I went to the courthouse like 400 times to make sure they understood cost of care, right? Because it's coming out of the sheriff's office. We don't have a big budget. So I went over there every month and said, hey, did she pay? Great, here's the receipt. Well, what they weren't telling me was she wasn't making full payments. And they didn't know that was wrong. So she would come in and she would pay $3 on February and $15 in March. And so to them, they said, well, she's paying, so obviously it's fine. So had we had been notified of that, or had maybe I had been a little persistent in the court, we wouldn't have lost $10,000. I mean, we didn't lose it because we won the case, but my point being, if it was documented a little better, or I was a little more persistent on the cost of care, the dog would have been ours after 2 months because she couldn't pay the full payment. And then he would have gotten different care, or been sent to a foster, or euthanized, or whatever the case is. Instead, we spent all this money for something that wasn't done correctly, without throwing someone under the bus. Great. Okay, so here's again my checklist. This one's a little different because I didn't have all that history. I didn't have a warning, obviously. My probable cause was easy. Statements from my vets. My vets came and testified, which was really great. We had actually the vet from the other state come and do like a WebEx testifying. We had the owner who said that she was doing all this other stuff. We had what she was doing, which was wrong, which the vet talked about. Anyways, questions, concerns, snide comments? These are my kids. No, nothing? Okay. Chief did make it. He actually got adopted by the veterinarian that had been keeping him for like a year. And he actually was one who was a great testifying person because he got to see the changes in Chief. Chief ended up gaining, I think it was like 30 pounds in the first month with adequate diet, which is so surprising. He will always have his ear infection. He got some of his teeth pulled, so he's a little old man now. They aged him, DFL aged him about 8. That vet aged him about 6 or 7, but he's still 25, so. Anything else? Sola did not make it. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Okay. Anything else? Anything I missed? Arguments? Would you guys have handled the cases any differently, maybe? Nothing? Oh, thanks.